Thank you, and I'm glad other people have mentioned renters, because I haven't actually mentioned renters in my presentation, but they are a distinct concern, so thanks for covering off on that. That's this. So what I'm going to talk about is drawing on about 10 years of our research and also my former history as an energy efficiency advisor for households. So a range of projects, mostly here at RMIT, involving in-depth in-home conversations and home tours with households. So really to understand how energy initiatives will or won't or do or don't mesh with daily life, and therefore what sort of impacts, positive or negative, they're likely to have. What have I done to that one? So some of the main thing I'm going to mention as far as what we've talked too much about is choice. So by that I mean more choice, and choice as always being an invariably positive and desirable thing for consumers. So we're already in, I guess, an environment where many households misunderstand or lack confidence about their own tariff at the moment. Many don't know if it's a flat rate or time of use. Often they think it's time of use, but it isn't. Around half of them actually believe that electricity is cheaper at night, whereas for the majority of them it isn't. So that affects then how they're acting now and what we can anticipate can happen in response to demand management, for example. They also often don't know what the tariff times are if they do believe that they have cheaper times of the day to use energy. And so with all the tariff complexity and the choice that's out there, we're actually in a situation where many households are discouraged from engaging with energy or switching tariffs. They've made a sort of actually considered decision based on the idea that they can't be sure that the process will be worth the time and effort involved, that they'll get a better outcome if they go through that process, and they won't end up disappointed or embarrassed that they ended up in a worse position after making a change. And we call this deliberate disengagement. So I'll just move on to not enough, because I think that's a productive area to focus. So we don't talk enough about how households actually live. So in the home occupants don't actually decide to consume energy. They actually make hundreds of individual decisions throughout the day to warm, cool themselves, wash, cook, clean, learn and play. And so the idea of intervening in energy practices and what's happening in the household, it's not as feasible to get people to make these choices that we envisage them doing, because they're not actually thinking about energy as they go about their daily life. I also think we're not talking enough about the impact of Australian culture on the way people are living. So we have a vast amount of marketing out there that's a much louder voice than, say, energy education or energy efficiency, and that's telling people to get more TVs and what their home should look like, how clean they should be. And we have this very large influence that does make people feel that there's a way they should live that is possibly more energy consumptive than what would be energy efficient for them. And we don't talk enough about how hectic daily lives are, the complex social dynamics that, I guess, draw attention away from energy use in the home, and the wide and varied amount of health issues that impact energy use. I'd just like to remind us, I guess, that most households are not like any of us in the room. Just the fact that each of us are here today attending this event distinguishes us quite dramatically from average households. Average households are not as numerate or literate as most of us. They may be in another language, or they may lack the digital literacy that often we assume that people will have to help them navigate energy issues. They don't find energy industry interesting, and they're not paid to read and think about it. So they're starting from a much, much lower base than we are. And they're often overwhelmed by the often inconsistent terminology around bills and other aspects of energy, and the rapid change in the energy sector and market. So things change, and it takes many years for community understandings to shift. And we also forget sometimes that we're actually facing a hurdle around the decreasing visibility of energy in the home. And what I believe is contributing to that from talking to households is that we've shifted over to direct debit and electronic billing, and now households have much fewer reminders about energy through the billing period, and less people in the home are getting those reminders about energy. So there's been a technological change there that we haven't really accounted for in the way we envisage householders should engage in the future. I don't think we're talking enough about the potential risks from new tech solutions such as smart control. So this is based on some research we did where we trialled smart plugs with households, gave them to regular households rather than just early adopters. And they do suit tech enthusiasts with spare time that love these types of devices. These are a small minority of consumers. And these consumers don't necessarily use them to save energy. They have other ways that they can be used that can be far more exciting than saving energy. The marketing around these devices, which the energy sector assumes are going to be used for energy management, actually often encourages energy-intensive lifestyles. We're trying to interact with a different industry, the smart home control industry. It has completely different ideas about what these products are for and what they want consumers to do with them. And we need to realise that we can't necessarily impact that. These types of devices are of little interest to the over 55s, so that leaves a whole category of a large number of households out of the debate and the opportunity. And they often rely on expensive smartphones, reliable internet, and high levels of data. So that's excluding a whole lot of households from using this type of control. So one thing I think the energy sector needs to talk about more is about how to do realistic, real-life assessments of the type of technologies that we assume will help consumers before we actually get the policy in place that's based on assumptions about the outcomes from these devices. We do talk quite a lot about vulnerable consumers, and we must keep doing that, and the protections that are available for them. We also talk about what we can do for engaged consumers, like the tech solutions for the people that are really keen. But I think we do forget a bit about the sort of quite large rest in the middle that are not necessarily identified by specific markers as vulnerable, but could be if a life change happened. Various things could make them vulnerable. There's a lot of people there that aren't really into tech, don't really want to think about energy, but the energy sector needs to be able to, I guess, facilitate their household life without making energy a huge burden. So from that, I think we don't talk enough about simplicity, so that most households don't really want to spend much time accessing, understanding and analysing energy data, researching energy issues, comparing and switching, or thinking about energy in general. And the other thing I think we don't talk enough about is a strategy, a national strategy to build trust and engagement in the energy sector. So going back to the deliberate disengagement that we face at the moment, we need to move from that to build consumers and households' faiths in the energy sector as providing something that may be for their interests. We need to communicate the peak demand problem. And present households not just as a cause of the problem, but also as part of the solution. Not just giving them information, as a kind of talking experts to users. We need to partner with consumers and listen to them. and engage them in the social value of the electricity network. There is evidence that people are interested in the network for social good and for outcomes other than their own individual self-interest. And I hope we talk about that more over the next couple of days. And we need to counter the political and other misinformation through a strategy. And this strategy needs to be accessible, recognisable and long-term for consumers to get on board. That's it. Thank you.